not to be killed. I mean, that's quite a lot when you think about it. But it's not much either, is it? I mean, it's saying you can't expect to be given a place to stay and food, because there are some people who don't do that for strangers. But what matters more than the particular answers that he came up with, which were obviously limited by his sources, by his own methods of investigation, by the fact that he never left Königsberg, which of course is one of the interesting things. David Hume, the Scottish philosopher, went to visit him, and he says, "You're a cosmopolitan philosopher. How do you manage it when you don't go anywhere?" And Kant said, "People come to Königsberg. You came to Königsberg." So anyway, so he thought that he could study the world by being in one place, which is not exactly the modern anthropological method. But I think what is interesting is the way that he posed the question and the sort of answers that he came up with. He divides his anthropology into three types of inquiry. One of them is cognitive. He wants to know whether there are cognitive universals. I mean, things like, color. I mean, does everybody see green and blue the way that we see it? Things like that. The kind of questions that are currently being pursued by cognitive science. The second thing that he looked at was aesthetics. He was very interested in how mental activities could be grafted onto sensual activities. He thought that the power of the aesthetic was somehow that the ideas that we get would be reinforced by the sensual experience we have. Just to take a simple matter, good food, good company. The idea that when we eat together, why is eating together important? I mean, we talk, obviously, when we eat together, but the fact, if we enjoy the food while we're talking, he had this notion that the sensual experience of eating was an important way in which the ideas sedimented within us as common sense. And he used this expression, common sense, a lot, meaning not just sense as in mental good sense, but sense as in the stimulus to the senses that was associated with it. So one of the things he was interested in is how is it that ideas become buried in us in such a secure way that we share them reliably with others. And this, of course, was one of the main questions that Durkheim brought to the study of religion. He wanted to know how it was that participation in rituals, the kind of bodily experiences that we have there, the singing, the sweating, the noise, the sense of being exalted spiritually, how all that helps ritual to indoctrinate us, if you like. That was one of Kant's sectors of inquiry. And then his third, so one was cognitive, one was aesthetic, the other is ethical. He wanted to know how we establish the moral rules for behavior. And I mean, his basic, you may have heard of something called Kant's categorical imperative. I mean, he understood that we live in different cultures, and that different cultures value things differently. So he didn't expect human beings to have the same cultural values. I mean, it was by definition, cultural values are variable. But he wondered whether there was some way in which we arrive at these cultural values that could be the basis for a common exchange and the establishment of ethical and legal foundations for interaction at the global level. And he concluded that even if what we think is good varies from culture to culture, everybody wants to be good. That was his idea. Anyway, you may be wrong, maybe some people who don't, but his argument was that we all want to be good. And even if what I think is good is different from the member of another culture, then the fact that we both want to be good can be the basis for some sort of ethical exchange or relationship between us. And anyway, I mean, it's really a version of the old Christian idea, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The idea that, that the good is defined as something that we see as being in our own interest and that we also expect from others. I'm not going to try to explore Kant's anthropology in any detail at this stage. I just want you to read his essay, which is very easy to read, on the perpetual peace. I mean, given that Kant has a reputation for being a dry old stick, I mean, what's interesting is the name of the essay, which he got from a Dutch pub sign. And of course, he got the story of it from a Dutch sailor in the harbour at by the way, I don't think he was that way inclined. It seems to have been asexual, but I don't think he, you know, went for the standard mariner stuff. But he did talk to these people quite a lot, and he got this story about a pub sign in Holland. And of course, perpetual peace refers to the idea of heaven, the idea that when we're dead, we go to heaven and we live in perpetual peace. And this pub sign was saying, well, okay, we can't give you heaven immediately, but we can give you the next best thing, getting blasted on gin. You know, so perpetual peace was the drug-induced stupor that would stand for it. And so he uses this ironic allusion to address the question of how could we even begin to think about making a world that was always peaceful. And in his, he has an essay called an essay towards a universal history, and he argues here that actually the process whereby society advances is through antagonism. The conflict between people induces the need for law. That law arises out of the fact that we need to regulate our conflicts. After a while, we get fed up with the consequence of so much antagonism and conflict, and we have to develop laws that cope with it. And he says, you know, he realizes that it's a long way coming, but he feels that the destiny of the human race, if we are going to make a go of living on this planet, is to come up with a universal system of justice that applies to everyone in the world equally. And he says, you know, he can see that this is, to some extent, utopian, far-fetched, but he does believe that we can and should, as anthropologists or philosophers who indulge in what he calls anthropology, that we should be trying to imagine what it would take to bring us to such a condition, and to bring to those imaginings the best results of our studies of the human condition. And in the Perpetual Peace, he makes a very strong claim that the territorial states are themselves the principal obstacle to the formation of a common human society. That the division of humanity into territorial states reproduces amongst us endlessly a sense of divided identity. And he starts out from the notion that that the world at one time, perhaps in the Paleolithic, belonged to us all. People could go anywhere in the world, and he envisages a time in the future when that will be so again. And this, of course, for us, I think, sounds particularly implausible, given the kind of restrictions that are placed on us in travel. But you know, the fact is that the system of passports that we use has really only been in place since the First World War. I mean, it's less than 100 years. And it may be a surprise to you to know that Britain operated no immigration controls at all until the 1920s.